Hey, good evening and welcome to this brand new edition of Hannity's America. Now we have a special show for you, and we get right to our top story tonight, and that's Tuesday's all-important Pennsylvania primary. Now, for complete analysis, we turn to former Bush advisor, now Fox News contributor, Karl Rove. The architect, Karl Rove. Karl?
How are you, sir?
Good to see you, sir. All right, Tuesday's a big night. Obviously, Hillary's been in a bit of trouble, but she's making a rebound as a result of the comments by Barack Obama. Your thoughts for Tuesday?
Well, you're right. She started out ahead. This was a state that's sort of made for more blue-collar, less affluent, less educated Democrats, lots of conservative Democrats, blue-collar Democrats. The race closed, as you'd expect it to close, simply because she was so far ahead. But he was closing pretty fast, and then he made the misstatement, or he made the statement, actually, that gave us a look into his heart on bitterness and how people cling to guns and faith and anti-trade and anti-immigrant sentiment when they lose their jobs. And, you know, Pennsylvania is a state of a lot of small towns. It's got two big cities in the east and west, and Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, but there are lots of little towns in between. And, you know, we'll see how much it hurts him tomorrow night, or Tuesday night. But this is a problematic statement for him, and it probably stopped his forward movement.
You were the first that I know of nationally to use the adjective arrogant in describing Barack Obama. Is this an example of that arrogance?
Oh, absolutely. And not only is the statement arrogant, but then how he handled it is arrogant. He made the statement, then he tried to soften the statement before, thinking that somehow or another he could cover up and say, well, that's not exactly what I said. Then he said, well, look, it is true. Then he made a half-hearted apology. Then he went on the offense, you know, shame on you, Hillary, shame on you. And now he's blaming it on others. Today, you know, on Monday, he went in front of the Associated Press and basically said, you know, look, my remarks were misinterpreted by people. What the problem wasn't what I said, it was what people read into them and twisted them into, which is, you know, all of that's a pretty arrogant way of handling this.
But
he said it, and we know what it means.
Is there a larger narrative, though, that has emerged here, in as much as, you know, one of the things that I had been pointing out for a long time is that, you know, we had all these people showing up at these rallies, donating money, fainting one after another, but they knew very little about Senator Barack Obama. Then we had Reverend Wright. Then we had the comments of Michelle Obama. Then we see he has a friendship with an unrepentant terrorist, Bill Ayers. Then we found out he went to the Million Man March. Then these comments are made. What conclusion can one draw now that we know these things about him?
Look, he is a very far left-wing Democrat. He's the most liberal member of the United States Senate, which is a very difficult title to win in a body that's as left-wing as that body is. And he's also very arrogant. He is an ironic, sardonic observer of what's been going on in the Senate since he arrived there. Not a participant, but he's been, you know, he's very smart, and he knows it. And he lets that display itself by the kind of arrogance we've seen here in the last couple of weeks. Remember, the bitterness comment is not the only arrogant statement that he makes in that speech that he gives out at the fundraiser in California. He also says in there that foreign policy is the area where I'm most confident that I know and understand the world better than Senator Clinton and Senator McCain, and goes on to base that on the fact that he lived in Indonesia for 4 years as a preteen, that he studied international relations at Columbia, that, quote, I traveled to Pakistan in college, and that he has, quote, he's the only one who has family that is impoverished, living in small villages. Yeah. And that's a pretty arrogant way of describing why you were so much better on foreign affairs than Senator McCain or Senator Clinton.
Do you think he's been successful? I think this is a very important question, at hiding his true beliefs from the American people for the better part of a year.
Well, he's got a very good storyline that he laid out in pretty powerful way at the Jefferson-Jackson Day dinner that was the right kind of post-partisan rhetoric. We're not red country, and we're not blue states, red states, we're United States, we're not a liberal country, conservative country, we're one country. The fact that it was not borne out by his record, that he has not made any effort to engage in true bipartisanship while in the United States Senate, is beside the point. But he hit on the right kind of rhetoric. The media treated him in a very friendly and standoffish way. That is to say, they didn't examine the things that he said, and he did, because he was an historic figure. Yeah,
well, Scott Rasmussen said this really doesn't hurt him that much in the primary elections for the nominating process, but this really will come back, all of these things, to haunt him in a general election. Do you agree with that?
I do, because remember, what we're talking about in the general election is sort of two big parts of the equation. How do you generate more support among the people who are already for you? But then how do you go get your share of the independents and poach in the other guy's turf? And the kind of things that he's been saying in recent weeks, whether it's Reverend Wright, the association with Bill Ayers, the bitterness comment, his comment about foreign policy, all of these things lend themselves to, you know, a further belief and further recognition of how far out on the fringes he is and how unacceptable he will be to those independents and to the soft Republicans that he's got to get in order to win the election.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Hillary Clinton. Her response to this was to go drinking with some people in Pennsylvania. Now, she's been all over this comment for the entire week, and obviously it's become a big issue, and they've been discussing it. Do you think she's handled it well up to this point, and we see an increase in the poll numbers for her as a result?
Yeah. Well, look, I think this is one of the first few attacks that she made on Obama that was properly carried out and properly executed. Now, the problem is it's very late in the game. Most of the delegates have been elected, and a lot of the superdelegates have either announced or, I suspect, made up their minds. So it's awfully late in the day, but nonetheless, it was one of the first good attacks that she actually laid out there. And her point was, you know, look, those people aren't bitter. That's not what people, it's not why people have guns. That's not why people go to church. That's not why people have the views that they have. They have them because they believe them and because their faith is important, because they enjoy hunting or outdoor activity. I mean, it was I think, probably, you know, one of her better moments in the last several months, and it came at just the right time.
If you had to predict Tuesday, Hillary by what percentage?
Hillary by high single digits.
The architect, Karl Rove, will be watching you right here on our Fox News election coverage on Tuesday night. Thank you for being with us on Hannity's America.
You bet.